was necessary or important to basically remove Christianity or remove the belief in God. But I would really like to know what would be the great benefit of that in our society, present society, what we have right now, even on its own, and also compared to having a society based on Christianity or with Christianity. What would be the great benefit that I would look forward to as a society as a whole if atheism was the main thing?
A very good question. First of all, we're not arguing whether or not Christianity should prevail. We're arguing whether or not it is true. But I will also carry on. Modern societies that are largely non-religious have some of the highest levels of happiness as typically measured, the highest levels of health care. Societies such as Norway and Japan, that are largely non-religious, are much happier by almost any means. I would point out that this morality that's acceptable to kill people simply because you think that God told you, I think that's immoral. I think that's highly immoral. To think that somehow some voice in your head says that you can kill people unless it's acceptable, that's immoral. Well, you have no moral basis at all. I think that the concept of not harming people is a good moral basis. It's not absolute. It's certainly not absolute, but it's certainly a good start on deciding how to treat people. I think if our society is going, if the U.S. is going to prevail in the world, we need to understand science, we need to understand biology, we need to understand all these things. Christianity has largely been antithetical because it is tied to the past, towards modern science, modern medicine advances. Every one of us is aging. Every one of us has a possible benefit from stem cell research. And yet, because of certain strange philosophies, we're not doing science on this basis that could help every one of us. I think that is immoral. So there is a very straightforward answer, I think, to your question. We could all live happier lives. We could all get better medicine if Christianity were not seen as the overriding religion in our nation. Thank you.
After Nachos Ignacio's 2-minute answer, we will close down the mic for questions.
Sorry. So, what does atheism look forward to? Atheism, I don't think, has anything to look forward to because this is all we get. Just life here on earth, and that's it. After we die, it's done and it's over, and there's nothing to look forward to after. So why don't we get our way, since this is the only life that we can live? Why don't we just do the best we can to do what we want to do? Don't you just hate you have to do some things, but you want to do some things? If there is no God, I wouldn't even say what I would want to do. But about that we can't do stem cell, we do stem cell research, and Christians are not against stem cell research. We are for adult stem cell research. We're not for killing little embryos to harvest their cells, then to kill some type of class of people to benefit another type of class of people. That's embryonic stem cell research, and there is no positive medicine or a positive research that has come out of embryonic stem cell research. The only thing we get from embryonic stem cell research is rejection, mutation, and tumors. There's nothing. We get a lot. Over 72 treatments we have done with adult stem cell research. And we are for stem cell research, for helping people. There is no Christian, at least if they know their stuff, is against adult stem cell research.
Sorry, the platform for questions is now closed. Sorry. We're going to have 2-minute conclusions from each, after which we'll ask Neo to come up and close us down.
Did you have a question, Anna?
Maybe behind the stage I'll have a question.
First of all, I'd like to conclude by saying that the cosmological argument still stands, because if the premise 1 is rejected, then whole rationality is rejected, and then it has to be believed on either emotions or faith or something that he attributes Paul, some mind thing that happened to him. So cosmological argument stands. To the teleological argument, there was nothing that I see that was presented against that. He said it only looks designed, but if he admits that it looks designed, then there has to be a designer. You can't have a design without a designer. The moral argument, I'm glad he believes in love, and I'm glad he believes that there is an absolute moral law if he does. But there is no justification for it. It doesn't follow that you can just have a prescription without a prescriber. You can't have legislation without a legislator. So you can't have a moral law without a moral lawgiver. As for the authenticity of the New Testament Gospels, the historical argument, if these evidence that I have presented are the abundant, the 5,686 manuscripts that we have, if that's not evidence, I'd like to know what that is. These manuscripts that we found that are more manuscripts than any other ancient event in the historical events, more accurately copied earlier to the events. He even admits that they were written 40 years after the events, so no time for legendary corruption. And there were eyewitnesses, and say that there was no extra biblical evidence. How are you going to say the best evidence is in the New Testament? It's like somebody going into a court and we got the witnesses, and then we say, well, apart from your eyewitnesses, you don't have a good case. You got to get somebody that just read the story in the newspaper and then got to get them over here. Extra biblical evidence is not better evidence. The best evidence is the eyewitness, the New Testament evidence. So if there's good historical evidence for the authenticity of the New Testament Gospels, these Gospels reveal that Jesus Christ is God. Therefore, there's good historical evidence that Jesus Christ is God. And I'd invite any earnest seeker to look at the evidence with an open mind, and you'll see the truth, I guess, will prevail.
First, thanks for coming. I really don't expect anybody's mind to be changed tonight. Something of this degree typically takes a long time. It took me many years to finally come to the conclusion. So let's go over the points that we have about the belief in this one particular God, Yahweh. The cosmological argument is saying, well, we don't know what caused the Big Bang, therefore God did it. That's just simply a God of the gaps for filling it in. It could be that we may never explicitly determine what caused the Big Bang. It could be that our science is not available, that the physics necessary is not available, or we're just not smart enough. But that certainly doesn't mean that a God caused it. And certainly not necessarily Yahweh. There could have been any other gods that could have done this. The design argument, just because there's what looks for design, does not mean that there's a designer. Looking through the evidence of evolution shows us how life has evolved on this planet since, well, for about 2 or 3 billion years on this planet. To a large degree since in the last less than a billion years. We can see from the fossil evidence, from the genetic evidence, how life has come into being on this planet. There's no need for a God behind it pulling the strings. The moral argument, just because we have morality, doesn't mean that there's a moral lawgiver. I've shown you why we care for each other. The concept that some sort of God is instilling us is reprehensible. I've shown, I think, the fallacy of this concept, that it's somehow acceptable to slaughter women and children simply because a voice in somebody's head tells them that you should, I think is reprehensible. How do we know that it isn't just a voice, or Moses just doing a power play? I think that's reprehensible, and it shows the intrinsic immorality of such a thought process. As far as the truth of the Gospels and Paul's, I think I put forth a very strong argument that they were simply stories written in the latter half of the first century, first by Paul, who had no explicit contact, who simply had visions that he thought of as real. He could have been a raving lunatic, such as you see often when you go up to San Francisco or whatever, who was talking about the end times coming near. For all we know, he could have been that crazy a guy. And one more moment. The Gospels, we have no idea who wrote them. The names were not given to them until around 324 in the Council of Nicaea. So we have no idea who these Gospel writers were. Thank you.
Would you please give a really good round of applause for both our debaters who did really good jobs keeping